Thinking about moving to Maryland? Here are my top 5 pros and cons that you should know before thinking about moving here. As a lifelong resident of Maryland, I definitely do love living here, but it does have its drawbacks. So let's kick off our list first with the cons. Number 1, traffic. All right, with several medium to large size cities all in and around the area, from Northern Virginia to DC to Baltimore to Silver Spring, you name it, there's a decent amount of traffic here pretty much all the time, right? Now, it's not necessarily like pieces of LA and so on and so forth, but what I'm gonna say is we have, a decent sized city, then suburbs, then a decent sized city, then suburbs. And if you are trying to commute, whether it's for school or whether it's for a job or whatever it is, in between those, during rush hour, you can definitely feel it, Now, I would say, I think it's not horrible in most of the suburbs, like non-rush hour times. It's really not so bad. But there definitely are the roads going in from 495, going around the whole area, in and out of DC. It's gonna be bad no matter what time of the day. There's a lot of traffic on there. There's a lot of cars on there. So you can't just go by mileage. You gotta kind of plan your day a little bit on, is this gonna be during rush hour? Is it not? There's just certain sections that you really do feel it. So if you compare that to, especially a lot of the parts of the country that are sort of in the middle where there's more rural, you come here and be like, wow, there's a lot of cars. Well, yes, because there's a lot of people and there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of people going in and out to those jobs. So yeah, so traffic, definitely big con on the list. The other little bit I will say is it kind of feels like there's almost always construction going on, particularly on some of these roads, because there's so many cars that they're sort of in a constant maintenance cycle. So like 495 is pretty much always getting worked on. 295 should be always getting worked on because going into Baltimore is kind of a hot mess. Parts of 97 have some decent potholes that they really should be maintaining more. So again, traffic, big thumbs down. The second big con for the list is the cost of living. Now, Maryland is an expensive state to live in. It's not as bad as some other areas, but it's definitely not the cheapest. Overall, I think it's pretty expensive to live here. I think it's worth it, but it is expensive. So what am I talking about? Well, the first big thing that people really feel is the housing cost, whether it's renting or whether it's to go purchase a home. Like, our housing here is expensive. It's because of supply and demand. There's so many job opportunities and so many people here that just, if you want to live near the good stuff, it's expensive. So you kind of got to budget and look at that accordingly, because if you're coming from somewhere that's a little bit cheaper, you're going to have some sticker shock. Now, fuel from natural gas to electricity, that also can be a little bit up there, again, just because there's, such a high demand with so many people. Food costs are a little bit more expensive than some other areas in the country. It's not as bad as Hawaii, we don't have to import everything over, a whole bunch of water, so on and so forth. So food is cheaper than Hawaii, but it's definitely not cheap. It's not oh, this is a great deal. So if you're coming from somewhere else, just, be mentally prepared. It is a little bit expensive to live here. So even if you are getting a new job and getting a raise, you gotta, that's because it's an expensive area, right? So with the cost of living, we also, of course, have a lot of education and a lot of jobs, which is why overall it kind of balances out a little bit, but you're still gonna feel it. The third con on our list is the summer humidity. Now, basically, the humidity here sucks. I hate it. It's one of the things actually I probably like the least in Maryland is how high the humidity is here. So even though our temperatures are fairly mild compared to, let's say, Florida or Arizona or other places that really get up there in temperature, we're not in the hundreds, right? I mean, most of our summer months are in the 80s. We'll have those, mid 90s and so on and so forth days here and there, but overall, our temperatures aren't that strong. But the thing is that humidity is brutal. And so it's just a heavier air to breathe. If I go out for a mountain bike ride or something, I feel it. So if you're not accustomed to that, if you're used to more of a dry heat and you're thinking, oh, the temperature here is not gonna be so bad, you're gonna be in for a little bit of a surprise. So just know that the humidity, that it does suck. With that humidity and all the water around us, we also have a decent amount of mosquitoes. So just as a side note, if you do end up moving here, I highly recommend looking at one of the mosquito companies, whether it's Mosquito Joe or Bugs Be Gone or whatever. Get a company to come spray. It is worth every penny, man. And we can go out in our backyard and enjoy it versus kind of getting eaten alive. So that's our con, summer humidity. Our fourth con on the list is unpredictable and severe weather. Now listen, it's not as bad as say Tornado Alley, We do get some tornadoes here, and we do have some severe weather here, but it's kind of like weird fluke things, right? Like every 5 years, we'll get like a nice 1 or 2 foot snowstorm, which is awesome. You know, during the year, maybe it's like raining and all of a sudden the temperature just drops a little bit, and then we have a whole bunch of ice like covered in everything, which maybe takes out part of your garden, which sucks. Or maybe it's sleeting, or just like it's winter and all of a sudden now it feels like spring and then it's winter again. Like we have these weird ups and downs here. You know, it's very unpredictable. So as much as things are, let's say, more mild, we have these weird little spikes, which again is where kind of Mother Nature feels like a little bit confused here. If you're into sailing or boating or flying, we do get a decent amount of like aircraft or small aircraft advisory type bulletins out there, just like with the high winds on the Chesapeake, you know, so things to kind of be aware of. But overall, I'm going to say if you're in central Maryland, it's less about snow, maybe a little bit less about tornadoes, probably more about flooding. It would be probably one of the bigger concerns. So you got to look at the topography of any kind of place that you might live in. How is it grading? You know, things like that. So it is a little bit unpredictable. We don't have the constant temperature. You know, it's not like super hot or always cold or a ton of snow or this or that. So we have these weird fluctuations. So just something to kind of be aware of. So it makes the list. On to the next. Our 5th con on the list is public transportation or lack thereof. So here's the deal. This is not Europe. Like we are not set up greatly for public transportation. Like this is not like Manhattan where you can, you know, be in the city and you don't want to have a car because there's nowhere to park and you can still get in and around everywhere. This is more like, hey, there's a suburb and it's a, you know, 10-minute drive to go over to the grocery store. Well, you probably want that car. So there are plenty of people here who don't necessarily have or can't afford their own car. So they do have to use the busing and everything else that's here. So like, yes, there is public transportation, but it's not ideal. Like it's just not set up in a great way, you know, and it's one of those things where to get from one part of the area to another, it can be a challenge, right? I mean, take for an example for myself, I live in Annapolis, kind of right behind the Renaissance Festival near Crownsville. And if I want to go to DC, if I want to use public transportation, sure, there's an Amtrak station over in Odenton, but you know, that's what, 15 minutes or so up the road that I would have to drive to. Or maybe I want to take the metro in. Well, then I have to get to the New Carrollton station, which is going to take me, you know, 20 minutes or so to go drive to. So I would have to drive there first, which is okay if you have a car. So that's kind of my point. It's just like the way the suburbs and the cities are set up here, you can get in and out of certain areas by either a bus or a train, but then after that, the rest of it is not connected all that well. So it is one of those things where I put public transportation is definitely a con. It's just, again, the way things are sort of connected and sprawled out here. You really want to have access to a car. It's going to make your life a lot easier. So to me, big con. Public transportation. Okay, so I know I said 5 cons, but I do have one little bonus one for you, which is I absolutely love snow skiing. And it's one of those things where we have mountains here, but they're more like little hills. So even though I absolutely love living in Maryland, I still get my Epic Pass and I still travel out to the Rockies and I go do my skiing there and then come back and enjoy living here. So it is one of those things where I'm gonna say a con for me personally is that we don't have any like, you know, fantastically awesome mountains. We have more hills. Our first pro for living in Maryland, of course, is the job opportunities. We have so many job opportunities here compared to so many other states. It's pretty amazing. You know, we have several military bases that are all in and around the area, which of course attracts a whole ton of military people PCSing in, as well as all the support for them. Then we have all the government agencies in and around Maryland, Northern Virginia, and DC, which means there's a ton of lobbyists, there's a ton of support, there's a ton of DoD contracts. There's just a lot of action all in and around the area. So there's like endless job opportunities on the whole, you know, intelligence and DoD front. Then with all the people here, there's lots of teaching and nursing and like doctor type jobs, right? I mean, there's a lot of people, which means we have to take care of them and educate them. So again, there's just a lot of support all in and around this area. So job opportunities is definitely one of the #1 reasons why people move to Maryland. Our second pro for the list is schools and education. Maryland regularly ranks in the top 3rd for schools in the country, and we rank really high as far as how educated the citizens of the state are. So if schools are important to you or getting a good education is important to you, this is definitely a place to come check out. Now, there are several school districts that are really well known for having good schools and even rank, in some of the best in the whole country, whether it's over in Montgomery County, Anne Arundel, or Howard. We also have some pretty phenomenal private schools. So for example, I went to DeMatha for my high school that's over in Prince George's County, and they're regularly ranked as one of like the best schools for basketball, football. Their band is phenomenal, their education is phenomenal, and people know them all around the country. And even outside of the country, I've traveled to Europe and people they know my high school. That's pretty cool. So again, schools, definitely a big plus. Overall, I think the education system here is pretty solid. Like everything, it is case by case. You gotta look at the exact school district, the exact school, but overall, I'm gonna give a big thumbs up for schools in Maryland. Our third pro for the list is you get to enjoy all 4 seasons. So it's not like part of the country where it's always hot or always raining or always cold. It's one of those bits where we have an actual spring, and then it rolls into summer where, yeah, it's hot and you wanna head to the beach or go for a swim or something. And then we have a fall where, you can go have a little campfire outside and maybe go for a hike and enjoy all the leaves that are changing colors. Like it doesn't go from just green to brown. The leaves actually change colors, especially if you go out to like Western Maryland and go for a hike out there or for a drive. It is absolutely gorgeous. Now, after autumn, we do actually have a little bit of a winter. It's usually not unbearable. It's not like a freezing, super cold winter for most of the area here. I'm gonna say things are a little bit more in the middle-ish. Like, yeah, it can get chilly, but there's usually more spurts of like real coldness, and the rest of the winter usually isn't so bad. And we'll have some rain, and then again, you'll have spring again, and then summer, and it kind of repeats. And yeah, it's a little bit unpredictable, but the point is you get to enjoy some changes. It's not just like the same thing over and over and over. So I dig just having those differences, having that like breaks up the routine a little bit. So I'm a fan. I think for most people who want to enjoy a little bit of changes, you're going to love the fact that you can enjoy all 4 seasons here. Our fourth pro on the list is the variety of places to live and the different types of vibes. So we have everything from your cities like Rockville, Bethesda, to Baltimore, where, it's more of a city type feel, right? Then we have plenty of really nice suburbs, whether it's Bowie or, Severna Park, just all the little areas that are around the cities that have, again, just more of a nice suburb type feel. And then we have things that are a little bit more rural, maybe outside of Frederick or Hagerstown. We have some farmland out there, or maybe towards the Eastern Shore where things are a little bit more quiet, a little bit more chill. Then of course we have some of the beach stuff like Ocean City. Then we have some more of like the mountains over in Western Maryland. Like we have all these different little changes from farms to mountains to city to suburbs. So like we have a little bit of everything. It's not just like all one big suburb or all just one big city. So I love all the different little pockets and different vibes. And with all of those areas also come like different architectural styles, right? Like certain cities and certain areas are going to be known for different things. There's some parts where, like the whole subdivision or that whole area was like little cottage, waterfront, water view, water privilege type getaways for DC or Baltimore back in the day. Other areas maybe have a whole bunch of split floors and split levels that were like big in the 80s. And then other areas maybe have more like McMansions, right? Like maybe in like Potomac or Chevy Chase or something. So each little area has its own character and its own vibe. And I love that you can go and kind of see what speaks to you. Like, again, we have a little bit of everything for everyone. Our final pro on the list is there's always things to do in Maryland. Like, we are in a popular area with a lot of people and a lot of really cool stuff. So if you think about it, we have everything from live performances. So whether it's the, Cirque du Soleil or a big concert from one of the popular bands, they're always coming through, right? Because you have Northern Virginia, you have DC, you have Baltimore, and if you look at a lot of the tour lists, usually when you're on like the East Coast, the DC area makes the mark. Like that's one of the spots that they'll stop at. So there's always live music, always live performances that you can catch to maybe just want to go for a hike. Like we have the Appalachian Trail, we have local trails right here, we have, all the water if you want to go fishing or paddleboarding or just cruise around on the boat. There's plenty of water stuff that's here too. If you want to go to a beach, fine, head over to Ocean City. Like we have so many options that are all local and within like a day's driving distance. So I'm gonna say Maryland just has a ton of stuff to do. If you can't find anything, you're just not looking hard enough, because I guarantee you there's a ton of options all in and around us. There's no shortage of things to do here. So if you can't tell, I absolutely love living here in Maryland. I've loved growing up here, and I love raising my kids here. You know, the state works for me. I hope it works for you. If you have any questions about living here, shoot us a DM, give us a call. We're happy to help. Meanwhile, I'll catch you in the next video.